Hi, I'm Scott Johnson, the host of the World of Warcraft podcast, The Instance, and today I'm sitting here with Chris METZEN. Chris?
Yeah!
It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Chris.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. You know, it's a crazy time. We're about to launch The War Within and, you know, really kick off this massive Woldsoul saga, which is a trip because, you know, I haven't shipped a video game in, 8 or 9 years. So it's kind of wild going through this process again and just kind of feeling that anticipation, excited to see what people think, and when the product finally gets into people's hands.
He's such an iconic voice.
It's one of my favorite parts of the whole development process.
Well, let me ask you this question, because you reminded me of how long this has been going. I remember firing up the World of Warcraft OG vanilla World of Warcraft and seeing a trailer that said,
I remember that.
Celebrating 10 years of Warcraft. And I remember then thinking, you gotta be kidding me, that's insane. That's how long I've been playing these games.
Oh no.
And now we're 20 years on top of that, 30 years total. That has to be a little overwhelming,
Oh my God,
especially given
20
that
years.
you were here for most of that, had a bit of a break, now you're back.
Oh my
Does
God.
that weigh on you? Do you feel the heat from the time? Like, how do you feel about how that entire process
It's been
gone?
20 years.
I don't feel kind of heat or like the weight of time.
Yeah, I don't feel that either.
Relative to expectation. It's really weird, being a little older, a little wiser. Feels like 100 years ago, feels like 5 minutes ago, all at the same time. So when
Well, that's what happens when you play World of Warcraft. It's actually a huge issue, man. You think you've been playing for 5 minutes, but it's actually been 100 years.
Look at this Woldsoul saga, the stuff we're building right now. Thankfully, there's an immediacy of it all to me. It's just, we live and die by, how good, the things we're sculpting in real time is. Trying to hold it all in your head, the weight of the past, it's kind of beyond me. I can't really wrap my head around.
It reminded me of It reminded me of this comic I have to show you right now. This is one for the WoW boomers, actually. This comic I'm about to show you. This is Flintlock, which you should, if you've never heard of Flintlock, do yourself a favor. I'll put this link in the chat. But this is a OG, like a classic comic. Okay. Stage 1, denial. Wait, what time is it? I didn't just spend 8 straight hours playing World of Warcraft, did I? Stage 2, anger. I can't believe I just spent 8 straight hours playing World of Warcraft. Stage 3, blame. It's because the stupid warrior class is underpowered. Stage 4, depression. 8 straight hours. I'm wasting my life. Stage 5, acceptance. 8 more won't kill me. I think about this comic all the time. Anytime I spend 8 straight hours playing.
Like all the history all at once. I mean, there's kids graduating college right now named Jaina and Anduin. It's like, what? I often find it's not all that helpful to overdwell on, in the course of development. You want to keep it focused on what you're doing at the time.
Hey, Chris.
So that's how I try and balance it out. One day I'm sure I'll look back and go, wow. Working on this game again has really given me more of an immediate sense of gratification that just kind of keeps you focused in the moment. And that's generally, where my head is at on a day-to-day basis.
When you mentioned people naming their kids after characters that you created, that you named, and that you developed and saw grow and evolve and everything.
Dude, really?
Something that's interesting about...
Do not name your child Thrall. Like, Anduin, maybe you could get away with it. But are people really doing this? Like, do not name your child Sylvanas. I'm calling lie. You think that's not true? You think people aren't really doing it? I bet it's in the news. I bet if I Google couple names child after WoW characters. Let's see who's done it. I'm definitely naming my future son Illidan or a daughter Garona. Do not try to convince. Oh my God. Dude, if you're gonna just name the child like Deathwing or Hellscream or some shit like that. If you're gonna do it, go all the way and give them a badass name. Ask yourself if maybe you should just get a cat. You know, maybe just get a cat instead. Varian's actually, that would be fine. I think that would be fine. John Hellscream. Yeah, give him Hellscream as a middle name. You know what? I'll let that pass. That's fine.
War Within.
Literally John Hellscream.
Far, to me, is we're seeing the gang kind of back together in a much more complete way. So you're seeing Anduin talking to Thrall with Jaina nearby, and Khadgar, my favorite.
Ilaria is actually a good
time,
name,
but I love him.
Okay,
He's
Ilaria's
there.
fine.
They're all there, and what that tells me is that we're in for some coming together of a lot of strings, a lot of stuff that has been out there for 20.
Chat. He said, it's time for school.
20 years that will finally converge in some meaningful ways. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
I'll break it down. When I came back, I'm like, all right, let's go. World of Warcraft. Like, what do we got? What are we making? And they were in, they had already been doing War Within, or what would become, War Within, for about 10 months. While I liked what they were building and thought it was a cool next chapter in WoW, in my head, I'm like, for the 20th anniversary of WoW, like, I want to have a feeling, like whatever the product becomes, I want to have a feeling of pulling all the toys out of the toy box, right? Like older characters, the kind of macro themes that, the series has been about all these years, Titans, old gods, lightning
Every
gods.
character?
I wanted to feel like the anniversary was capturing, like this kind of mix of all of the core flavors.
Yeah, use every character.
And ultimately proofing out that there has been this storyline all the way through, that everything kind of converges into this
Since
crescendo.
Warcraft 3.
And in a very real way, how the War Within was shaping up, they're like, yeah, dude, like there's no way on earth, right? That that's going to divert the course of mighty rivers. There's no way to get that done on top of what we're already in production on. So that begat this idea of a larger saga. I'm like, okay, well, what if we can get there in X number of steps? What if we can build to something just ridiculous, but it might take a couple expansions to do. And somehow folks, bought in on it, like, whoa, that's wild. Let's go.
What?
And so Taryn Gregory and I, Taryn's our principal.
What is his crazy idea that he had that he felt needs to happen, that it's going to take several expansions to make it happen, and it's just way too crazy for them to put it in a way? I bet, okay, here's what I think. Xalatath is going to eat Azeroth like a warlock cookie. She's going to turn it into a cookie and eat it. Yes, and that's why at the beginning of the saga, the War Within login screen, it looked like a burnt cookie, because that's what's going to happen to Azeroth. Yep.
Story developer, so we work
gonna
together
eat it.
every day, and we talk a lot about.
So you will eat it.
We want to involve all these epic characters, but like when they're in the scene, they eat all the oxygen.
Oh! What? Did I? No.
And they could just go off and solve for X. So it's this balance between including all these mega characters and then finding clever ways to get them out of the way, so that the player has maximum agency and the newer characters we're introducing have space to breathe and live.
It sounds like it is almost an advantage to come
Letting
to
other characters have space to breathe and live? That's a good idea.
something that had already been started. If you'd come to the
That's
end
a
of
solid idea.
Dragonflight
Yeah.
and started from there, that's
Okay.
a little big. It's a bigger buy. It's like, well, wait a minute, where are we going now? We've been flying. Okay, what does that mean? What do we do? And instead, you were presented with some beginnings, and then you got to decide where those beginnings took you.
And vector it a little bit, the trick to, after all these years, creative direction, which even today, I don't know that I could do a thesis on, right? Creative direction is as unique as the person doing it and the chemistry of the team that you're working with. But kind
That
of
makes
finding
sense.
that balance again of having strong ideas and kind of saying, like, I want to go this way, right? But the team had already been, kind of constructing this thing. So it's a mix of maximizing kind of the things that they are most passionate about, the ideas that they're
Min-maxing.
kind of dug in on, and finding a way to bend everything towards a singular purpose, but boosting their sense of ownership.
So when you got up on stage at BlizzCon,
That was so fucking cool.
it was
I was
pretty
there.
magical for players.
Yes, I was there.
I can say that for myself and a lot of people that I know. And a lot
I was in the crowd, and let me tell you, when Chris took the stage, he commanded everybody's attention. He absolutely owned the show. Like, we were enraptured listening to what he had to say. I was so invested at that moment. People were losing it. He had people like shouting and screaming.
fans of the game saw this as
He is.
a return
It was
to
insane.
something. And
The power
I think
he
we're
had
coming
on
off an
stage
excellent
was like nothing I've ever
expansion
seen
in
before.
Dragonflight. But you got up and did something that surprised everybody, which was, we're not doing the normal, here comes the next expansion, here are the features, here's the storyline in its basic way. We are going
We
to
were
do a
enthralled.
trilogy
Yes,
of
dude.
essentially games. You spoke a lot about bringing, tying up some loose ends, but also creating a saga that is 3 parts, at least, and setting up really the next 20 years of the game.
Yeah, he
perhaps.
was like, we're not getting one
That's
expansion.
very different than what any of you have
Not
done
2
up to this
expansions.
point. Did
3
that
expansions.
present unique challenges to the way you wanted to create story, the way you wanted your characters to progress, these sorts of things?
But
Yeah.
now I'm worried. That's the reason they're not announced BlizzCon anymore, because they've announced 3 expansions. Does that mean that they're not going to do BlizzCon for 3 years at least? Because, or 6? Are we not gonna? We're not gonna have because they've announced. We have to wait.
It created
To the next-
all sorts of complexities. Under the hood a little bit, it's interesting in how
6 years?
when I came back on the team, the development process and even the conceptualizing process, like where does the expansion
Oh wait, wait. Wow.
process, like
Is that Malfurion?
where does the expansion take place? What are the main themes? What's the focus? Really have become much more democratized, right? And people were, had kind of found their voice in the balance of all the special teams that comprise the World of Warcraft team. They'd really built the vision of Dragonflight together. So as I came back in, woohoo! And there were folks going like, "Oh wow, how is this going to change our dynamic?"
Yeah,
in
that's a
terms
solid-
Of, being a creative director,
Yeah.
like, will we still have a voice? Will we still, have stakes in how this all shapes out? So, like I was saying earlier, kind of learning that again and learning that balance again, and coming in as creative director and be like, no, I'm not here to be, hyper prescriptive with everything as I might have been as a younger dude, but like really listening for the team's instincts. Like what are they responding to? What do they want to build? What
That
do the
is
artists
so
want
good.
to make? What are they imagining?
That's
in
a
terms
good
of that?
sign. Like the fact that he's thinking about how his involvement would affect their creative process says a lot. And that gives me hope
Pure vision. So
that
on
he's
top
being
of that,
considerate of that.
the complexity of
Not just trying to like show up and say, okay, well, this is what I think you need to do, so here's what we're going to do. That's just not the way that he's approaching it, which is really
I don't
positive.
think this gives up the ghost on anything. Like we're building 3 days at a time. This is, I'll say it. It's
new
insane.
territory,
It's
isn't it?
insane,
Yeah.
right? On top of the team, over a year ago, having committed to like an 8-week cadence.
Yeah.
So these folks we are moving so fast, and so the difference here is,
What?
guys like Taryn and I have to map out where we're going.
Wait, are you building 3 expansions now?
Like way ahead of the caravan.
At the
which
same
is
time?
its own really interesting kind of work, right? Checking in with everybody. Does this feel cool? Everybody hip? I want to make sure that we're building things that, not only, again, my instinct feels are cool and fun, but that the team is proud to build and that they feel they have a voice in and, can express themselves through where the story's going
Man,
with the idea.
I hope they're not getting overworked out there doing this, because that sounds like harder work and faster.
We're already mapping out, whatever, 13.1 and 13.2.
Y'all
and
better
how
be
they
paying your
actually
people
play
for
out
this
and
shit.
connect, and it's wild. But in a way, you get to step back and see a far more cohesive vision and a far more refined idea over time. So, and without, again, without,
How long has
spilling
METZEN
any
been
beans,
gone?
It's like, honestly, we're already talking about, the next few, post,
He left in 2016 after being with a company for 23 years. That was 1 month after the launch of Legion.
upwards of like 17. And it's just keeping the conveyor belt going. It's like we're loud and clear. The fans want more content, more regularly. So, in a way, just staying ahead of that curve and making sure that everything, again, is of purpose and telling this much longer story. It's been a blast. The creative, the pure creative on Warcraft, for the past year and a half has been, how would I put it, over such a long span of time. I want to say it's one of the most nuclear creative phases I've seen for Warcraft. But the pace is wild, right? Like the pace is wild. And it's like I ain't 30 anymore, so we joke around all the time like, we need to start instituting, company naps in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah.
For the old folks. But
let people nap.
It has been pretty amazing.
That's a great way of thinking about it.
Okay.
Speaking of personal connections to characters and story, somebody close to you, who I think is a very wise human, once said, online somewhere, that Chris is Anduin in some ways, kind of worn out, beaten up by a straight period of like nonstop work, right? But also on the other end of it, he's a little bit back to being Thrall again. And those two characters represent these two parts of who this person is. How much of these characters moving forward or even in the past have represented you where you were in your life? Like some people say, well, the early versions of these characters are they were so metal. Like even Tauren chieftains, they look like, these metal dudes and everything. And now they're aging, right? They're maturing. They're moving on in the world.
Hey,
like you are,
like
every.
You don't have to not be metal because you're aging. All right? You can be metal. You can rock and roll till you die. Haven't you seen AC/DC on tour right now? Those guys are like 80 years old and they're crushing it out there. So I don't want to hear any excuses.
One who's worked on this does.
It sounds like some bullshit.
Do you think that's a fair thing to say, that we'll see these characters change?
You can be
and
metal
evolve in the
even
same
at
way that
42
maybe
years
you have,
old.
and they're kind of your avatars.
Yeah, no, I know where you're going. So
Okay.
there's kind of an A and a B there. Like the B, which is easier, is certainly we want to push these characters forward. We want to show some aging. We are currently doing that. But yeah, we talk about that a lot. There are many new characters over the arc of the saga that we don't want to be just one-off. We want them to be, pals and, working together to solve
for
these
life.
big problems. But certainly the characters that have been around a while, we're trying to kind of find a way to like capture that age up, not necessarily age out, but like, okay, so in that cinematic at BlizzCon,
Right.
they went in and put like gray streaks in Thrall's hair. I'm like, oh.
It looked great.
It looked cool.
It got me. It's like, whoa.
That looked
and just
cool.
Anduin, staring you down. It's like our little boys all grows up. It's.
You feel for him. You're supposed to feel for him, right?
Which was the point. But just the idea that these
Were
characters are
we
moving.
portraying like his loss of innocence and like how experience had hurt him so much
through their own continuum and progressing and moving through stuff. Like, what a trip! Looking back from where we started, to the point where these are fairly fully realized characters within this setting, and it's just incredibly satisfying that way to see that progression. And certainly us as storytellers, as people, as we, it's not necessarily. It is certainly getting older, but it's also just experience over time. Big life moments, becoming parents, finding love, finding your career, all these big kind of life, hurdles. It's like, I tell folks all the time, like, don't be afraid to pour yourself into this stuff. Even when you're like, oh God, will the people down the hall dig it? Will I be judged? Like, yes, probably. But the answer is you're an artist. Go get it, right? Find your truth. Because often when, we're pulling from a place of like deeply personal experience, someone's going to feel that on the other end of the line. As you're playing the game, it's like some of those themes that really matter. Whether you're a writer, quest designer, narrative folks, cinematics, like the game design, like everyone kind of pours themselves into their into their craft. And the more genuine that is, and I think sometimes the more risk you take, I think you get more genuinely affecting content. I think people feel that, they feel you in it one way or another. There are many.
Well, I felt like with the, for example, with the Ilaria animated short, I thought this was really well done. And I think that they did try, like, they made it her story kind of relatable, where Ilaria in the short, she's looking back on her life and asking herself, should I have made those choices when I did? Like, should I have left when I did? Should I have made those sacrifices that I made that changed my life in such huge ways? Like, if I had been home for Sylvanas, would things have turned out the way that they did? And like having that introspection, and that's super relatable. Everybody does that. Everybody looks back on their life and they ask themselves these questions, like, what if I had taken a different road? And then her sense of determination at the end of it, where she's like, no, there was a reason that I made those choices, and I stand by those reasons. Those reasons are what make me who I am. And I thought that was incredibly compelling. And so and also what I've seen from Ilaria in the story so far has been setting her up for more of that. I mean, of course, I'm only level 74, so I don't know how it's going to go. But I think so far she's shaping up to be a really solid character with that you can relate to in these ways, that connects with you in a human, on a human level. Yeah.
Themes embedded in the Woldsoul saga, evidenced by different characters that are very pointedly things that I think today, or I'm struggling with today, for sure. But again, I think about it in terms of like, as the team's creative leader, that's not the job as much. I think the job is like trying to learn to call them out, and challenge them to kind of breathe their own experience into it, as opposed to pouring my own in. So it's a balance.
I assume that's what, over time, you have a character. We'll stick with Thrall for a minute. He's, probably the most well-known of the Chris Metzen. They certainly voice him. So
until they find somebody better.
Until they find somebody better. Maybe you'll age out of it. I don't know. We're getting there. But no, that you've breathed enough life into that character and given them enough to
people would lose their shit if they found somebody else to voice Thrall.
Over so much time that I have to think, in a lot of cases, they start to run on their own gas. And while I'm not asking you to tell me if there's any tragedy coming at all, we're not even suggesting it here.
I have a kill list.
Do you?
I've got like my top 12 characters. Like, they're all going.
Why is Khadgar at the top of the list?
He's 12 characters gonna kill off, and Khadgar's at the top of the list? No way.
I kid. I love Khadgar.
There's no kill
There's
list.
no kill
All right,
list.
good.
Okay, he was just kidding. But I'm positive, and he's looking very sussy indeed.
But you know what?
So there's no kill list, and then made the most sussy expression I've ever seen.
I mean, you might find yourself going, well, it might be time for Character X to take a character dive.
So there's
no one dies
I'm
in World
kidding,
of Warcraft.
there's no kill
Come on,
list,
let's be real.
necessarily.
Nobody dies. All the people that I thought were dead are not dead. They're all chilling in the Shadowlands. So I don't want to, this, y'all, oh my God, don't even get me started on this stuff.
Talk about this stuff.
Death is completely meaningless as long as the Shadowlands is still there.
Knocking off main characters.
Only people that really dead are people that
small
can't get reborn in Ardenweald.
And usually that is in service to, in the general story you're developing, if you really need to punctuate, dramatic stakes, the easiest thing to do is ask Lucas, blow up a planet, or
but what about Arthas? Okay, well,
knock off a main character.
okay,
Tyrion
wait.
Fordling, for example.
Tyrion.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
I remember that.
I'm still gripping on that one.
Yeah, that was rough. No pressure though. I'm just saying it was a rough
Shadowlands
moment.
is so
pressure.
annoying.
So we do talk about it from time to time.
So
but
annoying that
we
it exists.
Try and frame it with the greatest gravity possible, and trying to be clear that
Oh,
this
Sarah.
franchise
Yeah, it
has
was so
another 20
sad when
years
she
in it.
died.
It's this big ongoing idea, and losing critical
Losing her
characters
forever
is
was so
costly.
hard.
So it's
Because
we
she's
talk about
super
it from time
gone
to time. I won't tell you we
and
won't
dead.
lose anybody over the arc of the saga. Those types of moments are all about establishing stakes and that emotional, engagement from the player ultimately. So,
Does it help populate the Woldsoul Saga as a creative place to know that over the last few years, while you were gone for much of it, the team has made a real effort or a priority out of having allied races discovered in the world that players can not only unlock but then be and might prefer over the originals or whatever. Like this
Allied races
additional diversity for
are
choice
great.
seems like
They're
a
great.
really potent way to fill your world with
Yeah.
more interesting characterization rather than just, well, it's orcs and humans and a few others.
yeah, I love it. Just old school D&D and all these options on player expression, what kind of what culture you want to be from. I love that kind of stuff. So opening that up, especially like
That's been really
Battle
good.
for Azeroth, and the inclusion of all these new silhouettes and flavors or whatever, I thought was awesome actually. And even the ones I didn't think I would play, I wound up, I rolled a Volpera hunter, and then I consistently dress him like Robin Hood from the old Disney movie. So it's
my
like
God.
I actually really dig a lot of the flavors that have been added over time. Like
Yeah, it helps you discover some new things about yourself. I can relate to that. I've been there, man. It's okay. I'm glad. It would be really good if you could add an allied race of an allied race. So like tall Volpera.
it's, in my opinion, the water's warm. Everybody in the pool. I think WoW can stretch and grow to, encapsulate all of these flavors. I think giving players more options, more
Hear me
visual
out.
options is awesome. At the end of the day, I think, erring on the side of, player choice,
So,
player agency
well,
is,
Worgen
is,
don't have
is the right move,
tails.
like why you're playing this game in the first place, right? When you
I don't have
imprint,
it.
especially when it's your character, when you imprint on a look or a vibe or, like a vision that you connect with, it's like,
We need chunky
go,
dragon
get
dudes.
it.
Absolutely.
So let's bring it full circle
Absolutely,
to
yes.
what is imminent, which is the war within. Players have a lot of expectations. Some of it is based on just excitement because there is a 3-part saga coming. They're not used to that. There's a whole new structure to this. So what would you say to players who are pins and needles about this next expansion, the start of the big grand story?
As we were talking about earlier, we've never been in a situation where we've shaped the whole giddy up, all at once. So there's the adventure component of the War Within, and then there's the max level campaign, and then there's the subsequent patches, and it's all been designed to kind of play out over time. Narrative threads and sinews, kind of linking everything together. Personally, a little biased, but I think it's off the hook, right? At the end of the day, I would want people to remember it is still only, however, part one of a much larger narrative.
He thinks it's off the hook.
And I would want people to look at it that way. It's meant to rise and crescendo with its own max level campaign.
Will I be expected to walk in Quest 1 and yank the sword from the planet?
Oh, that's an interesting one.
can
I
only
would
be
say
really
that.
vague.
I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, the sword, the resolution of the sword
Okay.
that we started with at BlizzCon, actually, that's a 13 thing. We're going to build to that, and it's a
What?
It's a doozy.
One does not simply yank a sword from Azeroth.
I would even say
you are not prepared for that moment. And leave it at
Oh
that.
my god! Oh my god! What the fuck? He just said you're not prepared. He just said that Illidan. Oh my god. Illidan. World of Warcraft's best husbando ever. Coming home.
But it is a 13 issue.
Oh my god! I'm so invested right now.
Ultimately, things like Xalatath, we've been doing a lot of work to
Illidan.
kind of build her up as a very different kind
Oh
of
shit! That's so exciting. Yes. Yes.
villain. She is not like a Deathwing type, villain where he's flying and burning everything and like. Oh,
Okay, what if? Okay. So you know how Illidan, he used the fell magic to turn into a demon hunter so he could kill all the demons and defeat the Burning Legion. Well, what if now he's found out that the void is a huge problem? So what if when he's been out there, he's changed into a void hunter and he becomes the void version of a demon hunter and comes back to destroy Xalatath by himself with the I-beams are going to be purple instead of green, and all that magic shit, it's going to be purple instead of green. That would be so badass.
crap, we're gonna, clearly he's where the storyline ends. She's
Yes,
built
dude.
in
Void
such a way that, like,
Hunter.
we're gonna be confronted
New
by her
class.
and face her multiple times over the arc of the saga. So it's not going to be this, you know, one and done.
Okay, and
type.
what if instead of using 2 warglaives, you use a warglaive and a shield?
Like, oh, you know, she's the raid boss.
Yeah.
You know, she's meant to, you know, kind of weave in and out of events over time. So that's something I would say.
That'd
But
be
definitely
so
the sword thing
cool.
sticks in my head. You know, like certain.
What if he pulls out the sword and uses it as the weapon for Void Hunter? What if he comes back and he's really big, like bigger than the planet? So he needs to have the sword that's that big.
These themes are built to play out over time.
Be overcooked.
So I hope people are into that. I hope they're into, you know, a longer form engagement. Because in a way, you know, so many of our expectations kind of, you know, crystallize around like,
Might
well,
have
wait a minute, I
overcooked.
didn't get the full meal I was expecting in 11.0. It's not built to be that. It's built to be part 1. So
It's part
buckle
1.
up. You know, the ride will be, I hope, insane and insanely fulfilling.
Insane.
Going back to that promise of the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft, like, I want this saga to feel like it is just the perfect crescendo of 20 years of storytelling, you know, as we said at BlizzCon.
Yeah, there is a sense that we are fulfilling something. The 20 years came and will end this November. I guess November's launch, right? Yeah, 20-year anniversary will be this November. And there is a feeling, I can tell you from the player side, of really coming to something special. And I know that puts pressure on the team when players collectively have an idea that they think should happen, and then the team's like, well, we're kind of going a different way. But I don't know that I've felt this much positive feedback in a long time about just where things are headed. And nobody says that about a 20-year-old property usually. Usually we're like,
there's not a lot of precedent we have, right? Like that's the same contiguous project. There's plenty of game series run for 20 years, no question. But like, it is honestly a blessing and often sometimes a hindrance. Just trying to sift through the sheer volume of all of these details. Poor Sean Copeland, right? Just trying to keep it all, make it all make sense. But it is also its principal strength. Particularly because it's an MMO and a video game, because you've lived these moments. You didn't just passively watch. You didn't just, read a book or watch a movie.
That's true. I was there.
You've lived these moments.
3,000 years
and
ago.
There are stakes, so as complex as it is to try and push the world forward without breaking everything that came before, which is its own kind of challenge.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's a very noble challenge, right? It's a privilege to
do not
tread
break
water in this
everything.
complexity of this setting. After all of these years, it's amazing that it's still the same stakes. It's still the same world that you've always known.
Well, there's a future I see where you're,
There's so much comfort
reclining
in that.
some sort of chair.
You know what I
with a
mean?
blanket.
There is something very comforting about being able to just sometimes what I would like to do is just sit in the game and be in these familiar places. And you hear this nostalgic music and there's something steady about it because it's this thing that's literally been such a huge part of my life for 20 years. And so still having my character, still having my friends still playing with me that we're aging together, being able, like for me, being in places like Ashenvale or Darkshore, it feels like another home. It's this online home that I've spent so much time in, and yeah, it's kind of emotional.
Get over my
Blanket
knees,
over your
sitting by a
knees,
fire,
keeping you
Kinda
warm, and
emotional.
you're looking
It's so
back and you're
cozy.
thinking,
telling
it's
kids
home.
to stay off my
wow.
lawn. I know,
Yeah,
I know.
exactly. And they're all
part
in
of
their
your
happy
life.
suits playing whatever version of WoW they have, and
Like
and
50
looking
different
back at
versions
Grandpa's
of
accomplishments, and I think it looks like something to be pretty proud of.
There's
already.
people that have
Well, I, for
literally
one, could not be more excited
raised
about
children
this next expansion and the
that
entirety
played
of
with
the world
them.
of Soul Saga. And I think you and your team should be proud. And I wish you guys nothing but luck. In the
Like
next
their
few
dad
weeks.
played, the grandma
sir.
played.
Thanks so much,
This
Scott.
is
It was good fun.
generationally played.
That was hard to
That was nice. Well, I really enjoyed the interview. So, what are people saying about the interview? I thought it was great. Like he couldn't be very specific about the story, but he did say you're not prepared, which was amazing. It was fun. It was a fun chat. Chris Metzen being back and him being the executive creative director of the Warcraft universe fills me with hope for the future storylines. Same. Two very real, very open dudes. Illidan, the last Titan. No way. I don't believe it. But he will be in it. Yeah, he'll be in it. Metzen is the soul of this company. It's the first time in years. This doesn't feel like scripted. It did not feel like scripted corporate BS. That is true. That's a good point. It felt like a normal conversation. It felt very real. However you feel about WoW after all these years, you cannot deny the passion for story and games that Metzen has. True. Oh, it's really nice. Everybody lost it. You're not prepared. Hype intensified. This was probably the most exciting thing that he said the entire time. Yeah. Fun. Chris' face when he heard Scott say Tyrion Fordling.
Character.
Tyrion Fordling, for example.
The Tyrion.
Remember that?
He did say that. I didn't catch it the first time. Fordling. Fun. I bet the last Titan is Azeroth. I'm worried. Everyone might not have the patience to wait out the story if it's being spread out. Well, from what I heard at BlizzCon, these expansions are going to be coming out rapid fire. They are going to be... that's why they're working so fast. That was something that was a little concerning in the interview, was him talking about how fast and how hard the teams are working now. Because I think that they said they want to try a different cadence for the release of expansion. So not one every 2 years, but more often than that. No one said anything about the kill list. He said he was just joking about the kill list, but we'll see. Yeah. Back in WoD, they promised expansions every year. Oh, really? Well, let's see if I can do it. I don't know.